John F. Kennedy said in 1960, "A society whose young men and women are in a constant state of slumber will never realize our potential." Our young people must wake up. It is only the day that they wake up that they will be able to send a clear message to those in positions of leadership that you cannot continue to misgovern us. I look forward to those days.
It didn't begin with imports. It didn't begin with handouts. It began with one woman daring to build the factory Africa was told it could never have. There are places on this earth that are defined not by what they are, but by what they are not. They are landscapes of doubt, fields of skepticism. Here, they said the soil was too stubborn, the climate too unforgiving. They said the capital required was a fantasy, a dream belonging to other continents, other people. The corridors of power were a labyrinth, they warned, and the market was already captured by foreign interests who preferred a nation dependent, not empowered. To even conceive of a project on this scale was considered an act of folly. To attempt it, an act of defiance against a settled reality. But reality is only settled until a new one is imagined. And for that, you need a visionary. She stands where others saw impossibility. She stands on ground, consecrated by her own unwavering belief. This is not the arrogance of power, but the quiet confidence of purpose. It is a resolve forged in the fire of 1,000 rejections, sharpened by every door that was closed and fueled by a vision that burned brighter than any doubt. She saw not a barren field, but a future harvest. She heard not the chorus of naysayers, but the hum of machinery yet to be built. She felt not the weight of obstacles, but the pull of a nation's potential, a continent's destiny waiting to be unlocked. And so, she began. Not with a request for permission, but with a declaration of intent. The first shovel broke the ground, and with it, the spell of inertia. Concrete was poured, steel was raised, and with every new beam, the architecture of impossibility began to crumble. This was more than a construction site. It was a classroom for an entire generation. Local engineers, once overlooked, were now leading teams. Laborers, once unskilled, were now mastering complex trades. It was a symphony of collaboration, a testament to the idea that the most valuable resource was never the soil, but the spirit of the people who stand upon it. When vision builds a new reality, leadership must bear witness. The sound of progress travels far, reaching the very heart of the nation, and so they came. Not to inspect, but to learn, not to command, but to comprehend a fundamental shift in the national story. Even presidents call it a turning point not just for the economy, but for the national psyche. On this factory floor, surrounded by the thunderous rhythm of production, a head of state sees more than just a successful enterprise. He sees a new blueprint for the nation. He sees a tangible answer to the abstract questions of sovereignty and dependence. He sees the courage of one becoming the catalyst for the transformation of millions. This is where policy meets reality, where speeches about potential become proof of performance. The scale is staggering. Hundreds of tons processed daily. But what does that number truly mean? It means that every single day, the nation frees itself, ton by ton, from the volatile grip of global supply chains. It means the hum of this machinery is the sound of foreign exchange being saved, of a trade deficit shrinking, of economic leverage shifting back home. From the moment the raw paddy arrives from local farms, it enters a cathedral of modern engineering, dehusked, polished, sorted by optical scanners that analyze every single grain for imperfections. This isn't just processing, it's a commitment to excellence. It's a declaration that made in Africa is a benchmark for world-class quality. And behind every ton, behind every machine, are the people. Thousands of jobs created, thousands of lives transformed. This is the true metric of success. It's the farmer who now has a guaranteed buyer for his crop, allowing him to invest in his land, to hire his neighbors, to plan for a future he can finally control. It's the young graduate who no longer has to look abroad for opportunity, but finds a challenging, dignified career right here at home, applying her skills to build her own nation. It's the truck driver, the accountant, the quality control technician, the packaging specialist. Each job is a thread in a new social and economic fabric. This transformation ripples outwards, creating a wave of prosperity that lifts the entire community, funding schools, supporting small businesses, and replacing despair with a palpable sense of hope and forward momentum. Look closer. This is more than rice. This is food security. It is the foundational promise that a nation can feed its own people, independent of political turmoil or economic storms. It is the quiet dignity of a meal that comes from your own soil, cultivated by your own hands, and secured by your own ingenuity. This is self-reliance. It is the deliberate, strategic act of breaking the chains of dependency. It is the understanding that true independence is not merely political, but economic. It is the power to determine your own path, to build your own table rather than waiting for crumbs from another's. And ultimately, this is the dream realized. This is Africa feeding itself. This factory, these fields, this vision, they are not an isolated miracle. They are a prototype for a continent. A powerful, undeniable message that the future of Africa will be planted, harvested, and built by Africans. In the annals of power, the portraits are often the same. Stern men in dark suits, their authority derived from institutions, from armies, from inherited wealth. But look closely at this face. Here, power has a different texture, a different source. Her leadership redefines not just what power looks like, but what it does. For too long, power in Africa was seen through a distorted lens, either the iron fist of a dictator or the outstretched hand of a supplicant seeking aid. She rejected both caricatures. Her power isn't wielded like a weapon, nor is it a performance for a global audience. It is cultivated, like the very rice fields she has brought to life. It is a power rooted in a profound understanding of her people's needs, a fierce belief in their capabilities, and an unshakable vision for a self-determined future. She didn't inherit a boardroom. She built an empire from the ground up with intellect, empathy, and a will of iron. This is leadership as service, as stewardship, proving that true strength lies not in dominance, but in empowerment. Not in commanding obedience, but in inspiring belief. From a distance, it might be mistaken for any other industrial complex. But to understand what you are truly seeing, you must look beyond the surface. This is far more than rice. This is African sovereignty forged in steel and cast in concrete. For generations, the story of African agriculture has been a painful paradox. A continent with 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land, yet a net importer of food, spending billions annually to feed its population. It was a cycle of dependency, a vulnerability exploited by global market fluctuations and the shifting priorities of foreign donors. This factory is the shattering of that cycle. Every beam, every silo, is a declaration of independence. It is a fortress, not against a military invasion, but against the silent threat of food insecurity. The hum of its machinery is the new anthem of self-reliance. The steam rising from its vents is the continent exhaling, no longer holding its breath for the next shipment to arrive. Here, the philosophy of producing what you consume is no longer a slogan. It is an operational reality, a closed loop of prosperity where the wealth generated by the land stays with the people of the land. And the world is watching. In the chanceries of Western capitals, the rise of this new economic powerhouse is a topic of intense discussion. For decades, their relationship with nations like Burkina Faso was defined by aid and a sense of paternalism. Now, they are forced to recalibrate. They see a partner, not a dependent, a competitor, not a charity case. Some watch with apprehension, seeing a decline in their geopolitical influence. A nation that can feed itself is a nation that can chart its own course without seeking external approval. The old game is over. Simultaneously, on the trading floors of London, New York, and Shanghai, global investors take notice. The data flashes across their screens, telling a story that defies outdated perceptions of Africa as a continent of pure risk. This factory is a multi-billion-dollar case study demonstrating that sophisticated industrial projects can be conceived, financed, and executed entirely within an African framework. It has de-risked the entire region. The narrative is shifting from emerging market to growth engine. They are not investing out of charity. They are investing because they see the undeniable logic of a continent finally harnessing its own immense resources for its own benefit. The impact of this revolution in rice does not stop at the borders of Burkina Faso. Like ripples in a pond, its effects are spreading across West Africa. The animated maps on news reports show arrows of distribution, but these lines represent more than just logistics. They are lifelines. In Mali, in Niger, in Ghana and the Ivory Coast, neighboring nations benefit. For the first time, a stable, high-quality and affordable supply of a staple food is available, sourced not from thousands of miles across the ocean, but from right next door. Regional food security strengthens, moving from a theoretical goal in policy documents to a lived reality. What does this mean for ordinary people? It means a mother in Bamako can be certain that the price of rice won't suddenly double. It means a generation of children will grow up with better nutrition, their minds and bodies fueled for the future. This factory has become a hub of regional diplomacy. Delegations arrive not to ask for aid, but to learn and collaborate, fostering a new sense of shared destiny. The dream of an integrated African economy is being built, one sack of rice at a time. This is more than a successful business. It is a blueprint for self-reliance for the entire continent. It is the 21st century fulfillment of the Pan-African dream, a vision articulated by the founding fathers of modern Africa. From Kwame Nkrumah's call for economic unity to Thomas Sankara's defiant insistence on self-sufficiency. They dreamed of a day when Africa would stand on its own feet, free from the economic shackles that persisted long after the political chains of colonialism were broken. Today, that dream is being realized. The blueprint is clear. It begins with visionary, homegrown leadership. It requires the courage to reject imported models and instead build solutions tailored to local realities. It prioritizes the most fundamental of human needs, food, as the bedrock of sovereignty. But perhaps its most powerful element is psychological. It is a resounding refutation of Afro-pessimism. It sends a message of hope from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, from Cairo to Cape Town. It tells a young entrepreneur in Lagos, a software developer in Kigali, that their audacious dreams are not only valid but essential. It is a catalyst for a continental renaissance of confidence. So look again at this majestic complex glowing in the golden hour. See it not as a collection of buildings, but as the heart of a new ecosystem of prosperity and pride. This is not just a factory. It is a paradigm shift. It is the quiet, determined, and irreversible process of a continent reclaiming its own narrative. This is Africa feeding itself, by itself. And in that simple, profound act, everything changes. To feed oneself is the most basic expression of freedom. It is to be beholden to no one for your survival. For Africa, a continent that has fed the world with its resources and its culture for centuries, to finally and fully feed itself is to close a long, painful chapter of history and begin a new one. It is the ultimate decolonization, the decolonization of the plate, of the stomach, of the future. The seeds of sovereignty planted here will grow into a mighty forest of self-sufficiency that will stretch across the entire continent. The journey has just begun, but the path forward is now clear, illuminated by the light of this monumental achievement. They said Africa would always import. It was a narrative etched in the ledgers of colonial history, a story told in the hulls of ships that for centuries took more than they ever brought back. They, the architects of a global economy designed for dependence, drew lines on maps and balance sheets that decreed this continent a perpetual consumer, a source of raw materials, but never a master of its own table. They pointed to statistics, to climate challenges, to political instability, all the while ignoring the systems they themselves had put in place to ensure this very outcome. The world was conditioned to see a continent with its hand out, not with its hands building. And within that grand dismissive narrative was a smaller, more insidious one. They said women could not build at this scale. They whispered it in boardrooms where capital was denied. They spoke it in communities where tradition was weaponized to limit ambition. A woman's place, they argued, was in the soil, tilling and harvesting, the unsung, unpaid engine of subsistence agriculture. But to command the steel and concrete of industry, to orchestrate the complex dance of logistics, finance, and international trade, that, they insisted, was a realm reserved for men. The idea of a woman not just participating, but leading, not just managing, but creating an empire from the red earth of the Sahel, was treated as a fantasy, a pleasant but ultimately unrealistic dream. But here, in the heart of Burkina Faso, the ground began to tremble not with the weight of history, but with the rhythm of a new machine. A response was being forged, not in words, but in polished steel and flowing grain. This factory is more than a building, it is an argument. It is a declaration of economic sovereignty made manifest. Listen, that hum is not just machinery, it is the sound of a nation feeding itself. It is the sound of dependency chains rusting and breaking, one link at a time. Each grain of rice that flows from these shoots is a testament to a different path. It is rice grown in Burkinabe soil, by Burkinabe farmers who no longer have to compete with subsidized imports from halfway across the world. It is processed by Burkinabe hands, men and women who have been trained, skilled, and given not just a job, but a stake in their own country's future. This is the circular economy in its most perfect form. The wealth generated here doesn't vanish into a foreign bank account. It flows back into the community. It builds schools. It paves roads. It funds clinics. It pays the farmer a fair price, allowing him to invest in better seeds for next year's crop. It empowers a truck driver to start his own logistics company. This is not aid. This is trade. This is not charity. This is industry. This is the quiet, powerful, undeniable logic of self-reliance. But Burkina Faso has spoken, and its voice is the steady, productive pulse of this facility, a heartbeat felt across the entire nation. And at the center of this revolution stands one woman. Look at her, standing on this platform, overlooking the vast operation she willed into existence. They said a woman could not build at this scale, but they misunderstood the nature of a woman's strength. They saw only the barriers, she saw only the horizon. They saw risk, she saw opportunity. Her vision was not confined to a single harvest or a single balance sheet. She was building for generations. In her mind's eye, she saw more than a factory. She saw a future where no child in her country would go to bed hungry. She saw a marketplace where the food on sale was a reflection of the land, not the global shipping industry. She saw thousands of women, inspired by her example, starting their own businesses, taking their rightful place as architects of the new Africa. Her leadership is not the loud, performative command of old power structures. It is a quiet, unshakable resolve. It is the wisdom to listen to the elders and the courage to embrace new technology. It is the empathy to understand the needs of her workers and the strategic brilliance to compete on a global stage. She is a matriarch in the truest sense of the word, a protector, a provider, and a planner for the future of her entire tribe, a tribe that has grown to encompass a nation. This is not an isolated miracle. What is happening here in Burkina Faso is a signal, a powerful flare illuminating a transformation that is sweeping across the continent. And Africa is rising. This rising is not a distant economic forecast. It is a present-day reality being built by Africans for Africans. It is rising in the tech hubs of Kigali and Nairobi, where young innovators are creating digital solutions for local problems. It is rising in the textile mills of Accra and Lagos, where designers are weaving ancestral patterns into global fashion statements. It is rising in the solar fields of the Sahara, harnessing the power of the sun to energize a continent. It is a quiet confidence, a reclaiming of agency. It is the understanding that the continent's greatest resource is not its minerals or its soil, but the ingenuity, resilience, and ambition of its 1.4 billion people. The old story of Africa is over. The pen has been passed to a new generation of authors, and they are writing a tale of innovation, sovereignty, and unstoppable progress. And so, we witness not just the success of a business, but the birth of a new paradigm. This is Insight Africa. We journey to the front lines of this global renaissance to tell the stories that matter. We believe that sovereignty is not a single, monolithic concept. It is a mosaic, crafted from a million acts of courage and creation. Sovereignty wears many faces. It is the face of the artist reclaiming a stolen history. It is the face of the scientist developing a vaccine. It is the face of the farmer planting an indigenous seed. And today, we have seen one of its most powerful faces. It is the face of a builder, a leader, a provider, and one of them is hers.